Shalom and welcome to Inside Israel News, your source for unbiased and thorough analysis of Israeli news, politics, and current events in the Middle East. I'm your host, Mensch-Kight. Well, my friends, the excitement keeps on coming. Inside Israel News is back, and here with the latest stories regarding Israel and the Middle East. The UN has warned that the ceasefire with Hamas is fragile. No kidding. As I've said before, the problem here being that Israel gets into these flare-ups of conflict and then they're never able to finish the job. Hamas is never destroyed. And so you just imagine, if World War II ended with a series of ceasefires and, after, a year or two of ceasefire, they start fighting again and one side gets the upper hand and then the other side screams, oh, we want a ceasefire. And then, everything kind of simmers down and calms down a little bit. In a couple of years, again, the same thing. We would never do this, right? You fight a war, you win the war, the enemy is vanquished, and then problem solved, right? We settle problems that way. We would prefer, as civilized people, to settle problems in other ways, by voting, by protesting, by finding nonviolent means to resolve our problems. But that's not how terrorists think. They want to murder innocent civilians, cause havoc and wreak havoc and bring chaos, devastate everything around them, and that's how they gain their power. Hamas gains nothing from passive resistance. Taking the Gandhi approach, as I've described before. So obviously they're not going to do that. They're not going to do passive resistance. They're not going to do protests. They're going to fire rockets at houses and hospitals and schools. That's what they do. Speaking of whom, Hamas is in very poor shape. The strategic analysis of the situation is that Hamas took a pounding during the conflict. I've said that a few times, and I just wanted to clarify and draw that point out a little bit more. Especially the destruction of the Gaza metro, that was a lot of terror infrastructure that they had prepared. And when you think about 450 munitions, over 450 bombs and missiles that landed on these tunnels and penetrated deep into the ground to blow up these tunnels, that's a lot of firepower. A lot of damage was done to that. And that is that hurts. I mean, that's storage for weapons for them. That's transportation, access to move paramilitary forces quickly from one place to another for various attacks. That's a lot. And of course, because the IDF had hinted that they might be going in for a ground op, Hamas and Islamic Jihad had put a lot of their forces down there as well. So they lost a lot of their human resources, let's say. They lost a lot of their terrorists down there in that fighting. There is a right-wing march planned in Jerusalem. It's an annual march that they do. It's a little disconcerting this year just because it goes through Arab neighborhoods, and if there's more riots and violence, it could incite flare-up of rioting and protests on both sides, and could lead to flare-up again with Hamas and the Gaza Strip and such. So there's been talk of trying to reroute them to other places and trying to keep them from going into these Arab neighborhoods. Generally speaking, it might be a good idea for everybody to chill out and take a deep breath, little time out, little rest, go relax a little bit, and let's not get things flared back up into violence quite yet. Israel always appreciates these moments of peace because, of course, Israelis want to live in peace and be able to prosper. Unfortunately, our opponents there don't think that way. So often they are looking for opportunities to incite trouble, and this would just create such an opportunity. On to the political news. So as I described last time, the Change Bloc, led by Yair Lapid, who was given the mandate to form a government, was able to reach a coalition agreement about a half an hour before midnight, literally at the 11th hour, or rather the 12th hour of the day. In any case, they were able to come up with a coalition agreement, at least in principle, enough so that Lapid was able to tell the president that he had completed his efforts to form a government, and therefore a government in theory, is going to be installed soon. Today, Monday, is the day that the Knesset met for the first time since that declaration. And in plenum, they announced the coalition agreement, and Speaker Yariv Levin, who is Likudnik and an ally of Bibi Netanyahu, accepted the new coalition, but did not set a vote. The vote has to be taken within a week, so it has to be taken by next Monday, the 14th. But of course, every day that delays, we get more time for people on the right to harass the Knesset members and try to dissuade them from voting for the coalition. So by next Monday, the vote will be taken. What the vote is going to be, how that's all going to work, what's going to come together and all of that, we'll see, because we've got time between now and then. Of course, we're going to have announcements and political jockeying between now and then as well. The Change Bloc is looking to unseat Speaker Levin so that they can set the vote sooner, and that would be a blessing, but obviously we will see. The fact is that it's only a week, and it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but they could have scheduled the vote already. There's no reason the Knesset couldn't vote Wednesday, right? There would be no difference. The only difference between Wednesday and next Monday, a few more days on, is that it provides more time for Netanyahu's allies to try to break up the coalition. As you know, as described, the 8 parties that have joined the coalition have exactly 61 votes, and a lot hinges on just one vote there. 61 is the required majority of 120 in order to form a government. So that's tight. It is very, very tight. So there are a couple of right-wing representatives who are members of Knesset who are I don't want to say on the fence, but they're receiving a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of harassment, but I'll come to that in a second. There's a lot of pressure on them, and Nir Orbach is the lead person there, and he is apparently telling his friends that he plans to vote for the Change Bloc. He has also indicated that if he won't vote for the Change Bloc, he could resign from the Knesset. That would promote, as I mentioned with Israel's election system, people vote for parties, not for individuals. The parties have to present lists to the election board before the election that include a prioritized list of their candidates, numbered 1 to 120, and obviously nobody wins 120, but you provide a list of as many candidates. If you're a party that usually gets 7 or 8 seats, you're not going to have more than 20 people on that list. But what happens then is if one of let's say you get 7 seats and one member resigns, then whoever was in line for the 8th seat gets that seat, and then so on and so forth from there. Well, the person who would succeed Nir Orbach would be voting for the Change Bloc. She has already said so. So if Orbach were to resign, he would, it would be the same difference as voting for the Change Bloc. Apparently there's a lot of pressure on Elkin as well, who's a member of the New Hope Party, but he's said that Bibi Netanyahu needs to go, so it's unlikely that he's going to back out now and not vote for the Change Bloc now that he has an opportunity to do that. So that's that. So those if those votes all go to the Change Bloc, they have 61 votes. But what should happen if 1 or 2 members of these parties refuse to vote to join the Change Bloc, to vote to install the new government? Then in that case, there are 2 more members of the Knesset who are kind of standing by just in case. And I mentioned this in passing last time. I wanted to take a minute to talk about it. Ahmad Tibi of the Ta'al party is in the joint list, and he represents a party that is secular nationalist, right? So the Ra'am party that is joining the coalition, that party led by Mansour Abbas, they are an Islamist nationalist party. So they're socially conservative, Islamic religiously, and they are nationalist. They're Islamic nationalist. And Ahmed Tibi's party is nationalist but secular. They're not part of an Islamist movement. They're more left-leaning in sense of not being, they're more socially conservative, but they're not religiously Islamic. right? Also, Ayman Odeh, who is an Arab representative from Hadash. Hadash means new in Hebrew. The Hadash party is basically the Arab Communist Party for all intents and purposes, and so he's a far left representative of the political far left. And on the joint list, they all run together so that they get some seats, at least. They don't want to fall below the threshold and not get any. Those two are out there kind of saying that if it really came down to it and it was, 60 votes or 59 votes for the coalition, the Change Bloc, and they needed just one vote or just 2 votes, TB and Odeh are standing by to offer those votes in the near term. And that would help to install the new government. Whether they'll actually cast their votes that way is not clear. They would prefer not to, most likely. But if it came down to one vote, TB could be the tiebreaker who, offers that 61st vote and installs the government. But that puts them in a very strong position, obviously, in terms of getting the government to office. But with Mansour Abbas joining the government and Ra'am, the Ra'am party is also called UAL, United Arab List, by some. So you may hear the news commentators talking about UAL, but it's Ra'am, led by Mansour Abbas. He has a number of domestic policy issues that he wants to address. And again, now that Israel and Arab countries are becoming allies, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain in particular, he has indicated that joining the government would help them address issues like violent crime in Arab communities, poverty, education, things like that, organized crime, which is a big problem with gangs in these Arab communities. That it would allow them to address issues like that. And, of course, they are, allies against Iran. They're all opposed to Iranian influence in the government, right? No one, whether it's, Sunni Arab Islamists or Israeli Jews, nobody likes Iran, right? Iran is a threat to both. Shiite Iranians want to dominate the Middle East, and they're a threat to both. So how's that all going to come together? We'll see. The vote will be held next Monday, one way or another, but if they're able to oust the speaker, theoretically they could get the vote scheduled sooner, maybe Thursday. In Israel, the Friday is considered part of the weekend because Shabbat is from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. Friday ends up being kind of a half day. Sometimes kids go to school for half the day. People will work for half the day, but it's generally kind of considered the weekend. So it's unlikely that a vote would be taken Friday. So it's Wednesday or Thursday. If they have to oust the speaker, probably no sooner than Thursday. And then Sunday's a possibility, but the Knesset doesn't always meet on Sundays. Monday would be the next major day. But obviously, the more time there is, the greater the opportunity for Bibi Netanyahu and his allies to try to scuttle and sabotage the coalition, to break it up, find one vote somewhere to try to sabotage the coalition. And obviously, if they could get 3 votes, they could really sabotage it, because then even if TB and Odeh voted, it would still be 60 votes and still be too few to win. But we will see how that goes. More on Bibi Netanyahu after the break. Now that we're back from the break, go on with the discussion here, talking about Bibi Netanyahu. Now, Naftali Bennett has called on Bibi Netanyahu to retire with grace. He gave a speech recently before the press talking about Netanyahu and his ongoing efforts to cling to power, and how now that they have the votes, ostensibly, it's time for him to bow out and not to be... not to make this a scorched earth, drag out process, but just to go. What's kind of curious about this situation, and again, because it's so personal to Bibi, is that it doesn't fit the usual political rubric, the usual patterns that these governments have. Now, in a multi-party proportional system, in most multi-party proportional systems, the leader of the right, in a situation like this where a left-wing unity government is coming together or what have you, would basically bow out very happily. Like, go for it. You guys show everyone how well you govern, right? And then, of course, he would expect that once they're in power, they will, make a disaster of things. And in 6 months or a year, there'll either be new elections or that person will be back in power. And that's where Bibi's breaking down at this point. if Bibi is right, if this coalition is dangerous to Israel's security, if it is weak-willed and weak-kneed and not able to stand up to the Arabs, stand up to the U.S., and fight Iran, if it really is all the things Bibi Netanyahu says about it, then what's the worry? What's the concern? Let them come to office, let them demonstrate how poorly they govern, and go from there, okay? This happens. There are a number of parliamentary systems where at a certain point people just want change. I mean, honestly, after 16 years with Helmut Kohl as their chancellor, in 1996, Germans were ready for anything different. It was time for him to go. 16 years as chancellor. Oh, my God, This guy was elected chancellor in 1980, and he left in 1996. He was elected chancellor in West Germany, and by the time he left, Germany had been reunified for 5 years. So that was quite a tumultuous term, and yes, I mean, it's understandable, especially for that fourth term, with Germany just having been reunified, that a lot of Germans had faith in him to continue as chancellor for that fourth term and kind of help bring the country together and maintain cohesion and stability as they underwent that process. But nevertheless, I mean, 16 years is a long time to be in office. I also mentioned, obviously, John Howard, who was Prime Minister of Australia for 20 years, 5 terms. Right. But as I've also pointed out, after 10 years, politicians get stale. And after 10 years in office, almost 11 years in office, Maggie Thatcher was basically thrown out on her bum from number 10 Downing because of, just the latest issue where the party didn't feel she was doing what they wanted to. And, again, with the political situation, with Margaret Thatcher being thrown out like that, on the one hand, it was not the way for Margaret Thatcher to leave office. Maybe she could have done some better succession planning, maybe thought that through a little better. But nevertheless, she left, but she could have told everyone it was going to be a disaster. The unimaginative and I want to say unnoteworthy John Major, who, his only footnote in history is that he was Prime Minister of Britain for 7 years, followed her and did a lot of nothing until the 1997 election when he too was tossed out in favor of Tony Blair. How did Tony Blair and New Labour win? Well, they adopted Margaret Thatcher's economic policies, the policies that the Conservatives abandoned when they kicked her out of office. They went back to the old school, the old crony politics of before in terms of economics, and opened the door. They handed an issue to their opposition. And Labour, which, their number one political weakness was that no one believed they could handle the economy. Tony Blair took, 2 nanoseconds to think, hey, if we marry Margaret Thatcher's free market economics with Labour's policies, that's a winning ticket because then we got the economy managed and that'll give voters faith. And of course he won. And after 10 years in office, Tony Blair too was tossed out on his bum by his own party because after 10 years in office, he'd grown stale. They wanted somebody new. And likewise, Gordon Brown was not, again, unimaginative, another footnote in history. He was Prime Minister of Britain for 3 years. That's his only contribution to anything. And then he was tossed out for David Cameron by the voters who restored the Tories to office. So if Bibi Netanyahu is serious, if he really believes that this government is bad, why not just let them come to office and mess everything up? If they're going to be a disaster, let them be a disaster. And then he can be the saving figure who comes back and cleans it up. Well, with the corruption charges and other such pending against him, and he's actually under trial at this point, Bibi is almost acting like an embattled dictator. He is clinging to power. He's refusing to quit. He's using every tool at his power at hand to stay in office. And I just don't see why. Why not just let this government be a disaster? And what's the danger, as I've pointed out before, what's the danger in choosing a successor, right? At a certain point, you can, leave the office of the presidency and play Andrew Jackson, right? Andrew Jackson left the presidency in 1836, and he continued to lead his party through the Van Buren years and the Tyler years and the Polk years until his death in 1845. He was the leader of the Democrat Party behind the scenes, and his whim, a newspaper interview he gave, a statement he made, could become policy very quickly. Bibi Netanyahu could do the same thing, kind of bow out from the limelight and cease to be prime minister and help guide Likud from behind, from behind the scenes. But he doesn't want to do that. He is clinging to the big office. He is clinging to power, and it's just difficult to understand why. If this government that is coming in is really going to be that big a disaster, then why not? On the other hand, if he realizes that this government is not going to be as big a disaster as he says it is, if he realizes that this really is the end of his political career, then again, why not bow out? Why not acknowledge that after 12 consecutive years in office and 15 overall, he has made an incredible contribution to Israel. He has established Israel as a free market and prosperous society. An entire generation of Israelis have grown up with his economic policies. He has provided incredible security and a policy pathway, a roadmap, I want to say, to maintaining that security, both through the strong relationship with the United States, but also by being tough and like with this operation in Gaza, hitting them hard where it hurts. So that they aren't able to flare up the violence every time they want. But in this case, I have to say, I'm personally, and I tell you, that's why Inside Israel News is unbiased. First of all, in that I tell you the facts as I understand them. I'm not telling you just my opinion or my take on things. These are the facts as I understand them. And I also tell you my opinion. And in my opinion here, Bibi Netanyahu is... He's in the wrong. Naftali Bennett is in the right. Bibi Netanyahu should have planned a succession in 2019, at the very least a 2-year rotation, and figured that he'd go 2 years and then whoever his successor would be would take over for the next 2 years, something along those lines. And he'd be leaving office now under his, on his own terms. Basically, he could even be president if he'd wanted to, if he'd sought that office. It's there's no power in the presidency; it's a ceremonial office, but it would give him some place to be in the political world. As it is now, Isaac Herzog, Buji Herzog, is the president, the first Israeli president who's the son of the president. Well, he's been elected, I should say. He's the president-elect until July 9th when he takes office. So Bibi, that opportunity is not open to Bibi now. Right, or to take that path. In any case, Netanyahu continues to tell his supporters to seek, to help him, to delay votes, to make trouble. They're protesting. There are hunger strikes in front of the homes of members of parliament. Ayelet Shaked, who's the number 2 in Yamina, has changed her phone number because she keeps getting harassing texts and such. It's getting dangerous. And the head of Shin Bet, the director, Nadav Argaman, Nadav has warned that this incitement, the online incitement in particular, but that it's getting dangerous, that it is reaching a fevered pitch. And Shin Bet is a Shabak. It's an abbreviation when you say Shin Bet. That's Israel's internal security. Literally means, security service. It's an acronym. Shabak is an acronym for security service. They're very quiet. Shabak manages internal security in Israel, and they don't make the news. They don't go on the news, and they don't talk a lot. Their business is internal security, quietly removing threats to the Israeli public and from within Israel. Mossad, of course, does the foreign service, and Israel has, of course, its police force, its military intelligence, and all of that kind of thing. So this is one more institution, Shabak is. In any case, when Nadav Argaman comes on the news, when he goes out publicly and says, look, people, the incitement is getting to be a bit much, that it's getting dangerous and reaching a fevered pitch, then it's a warning that people should heed, because it's not safe. There was a lot of incitement and a lot of right-wing rhetoric back in the 90s about the Oslo Accords and how Yitzhak Rabin was giving away half the country and a lot of that kind of thing. And it built up to a fevered pitch until Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by a right-wing nut. That's not safe. there's a point where you have to stand up. Someone has to show leadership and stand up and say, you know what, enough's enough. And the one person who could do that better than anyone else is Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu, Tuesday morning, should be on the news. He should have a press conference, and he should go before everyone and say, hey, look, I lost. It's over. It's fair. It's square. Everyone relax. Go home. Stop inciting people online. Stop texting people. Stop protesting in front of people's houses. It's over. Schedule the vote as soon as possible. Have the vote. And I will leave with grace and with dignity and walk out, head held high. Right. And again, if the government's as big a disaster as he says it is, then he'll have the gratification of being proven right. Right. And if it's not as big a disaster, then, hey, if the voters vote for someone else, fair's fair. That's just how politics is. And maybe the voters made a mistake. And sometime in the next 4 years, depending on how long this government lasts, the voters will have a chance to rectify that if it was a mistake. So we'll find out. In any case, when Shin Bet comes out, that's a big deal. So I wanted to note that. But it's time for Bibi to calm down the situation at the very least and not be turning up the heat and the pressure. And yes, there's a lot of passion on the right. As I mentioned, the pendulum in Israeli politics has swung to the right. 80 seats, 2/3 of the Knesset is from the center to the right, from Benny Gantz's Blue and White Party, which is technically centrist, over to parties like Yamina and religious Zionists that are far right, nationalist right and religious right. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of passion there, but that doesn't mean that people can break the law, that they can threaten others. That gets dangerous. Like I said, Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated in just such a fiery tumult. And to qualify that statement, all right, over here in the United States, we have a very different situation where people on the left are violent and rioting and inciting and speaking hatefully and attacking people. We get a lot of anti-Semitism from the left over here and that kind of thing. And there's a lot of dangerous rhetoric that comes out of their out of the left. For example, Google head of diversity saying the Jews have an appetite for murder, and Google just quietly moves him to another department, and doesn't get fired or what have you. If you interpose for the word Jew, any ethnic group, if he said African Americans have an insatiable appetite for murder, if he said Mexicans have an insatiable appetite for murder, if he said homosexuals have an insatiable appetite for murder, he would have been fired. Fired, canned, forgotten. He might as well go jump off a bridge somewhere because he'd never be able to work again, right? But he said it of Jews, and that's okay. And the signal from Google, just moving him to another department, is, again, back to that anti-Semitic trope, it's okay to murder Jews because whatever, and that's sad stuff. So over here, it's a little different. Over here, we have people on the left claiming that people on the right are violent, but we're not. We're fairly passive. And, even now, nobody's protesting, rioting, or doing anything, even though we feel that our country's going to hell in a handbasket. But that's the case. So when I say that things are getting dangerous on the right in Israel, I'm not saying that because I'm one of these, like commentators who are, right-wing people are dangerous. And they're like, I'm fond of the Israeli right. I'm familiar with the Israeli right. I have a lot of friends who are on the Israeli right and the left as well. And I feel, as someone who is on the American right, I feel that the situation is becoming dangerous. And that's why I want to convey that to you. Again, my honest opinion. It is my opinion at the end of the day, but I'm conveying it to you as I can. And again, I try to convey things as factually as possible so that you're receiving not just my opinion, but my facts. But when I have an opinion to give, like I just did about Bibi retiring, I let you know it's my opinion. Now, in my opinion, Bennett's right on that. It's time to tone it all down. An interesting side story. This has to do with the structure of the Israeli government or the structure of election laws and such, but also appertains to the political situation. Channel 12 is reporting that, and I should note, Channel 12 is a right-leaning news source, but they do get a lot of good inside information. So they're reporting that the new coalition, the Change Bloc, has plans to introduce a law that would prevent Bibi Netanyahu from running for prime minister. Under the new law, a PM cannot run for prime minister if they have served 4 years as prime minister. So basically, you could serve one full term and you could then theoretically form a second government. But if you've had 4 years, a full 4 years as prime minister, you would be prevented from running again. That law would preclude Bibi from running, who's been prime minister for 12 years. He would be the only one alive who'd be prescribed by such a law. Shimon Peres, the only prime minister predating Bibi, who was prime minister right after Yitzhak Rabin's assassination, he has passed on, and Ehud Barak, who's now retired from politics, and Ehud Olmert, who was charged with corruption after his 3 years in office. Neither of them served 4 full years in office. So they would not be prescribed by this law. But Bibi would be prescribed. He would be prevented from seeking another term as prime minister in the future. Now, in theory, a new coalition built around him could, in the future, repeal that law. It's an interesting way of doing that. I thought the previous approach that they had that would simply bar someone who served 8 years as prime minister from serving, or bar any individual from serving more than 8 years as prime minister. That would bar Bibi as well, because he served 8 years as prime minister. Again, he would be the only one alive at this point who has served 8 years as prime minister of Israel, 8 years or more. Obviously, he's coming up on 15 years here. He is the longest serving in history. But apparently this 4-year law is the way that they're looking to go with that. This would be an effective term limit, because it means that if you've served almost 4 years as prime minister, not quite 4 years, so just your first term, then you could run for a second term and seek the prime ministership there. But if you've served more than one full term at all, including a second full term, then you would be prescribed. You would not be able to seek the prime minister's office in the future. Right? Interesting law, interesting approach. Another aspect of that law is that a faction as small as 4 could leave a party to form a new faction. Now, in the past, it's been you needed at least 6 to leave a party, and this is really important because sometimes you have individual Knesset members who want to change parties, and they can't. They're once you're elected with a certain faction, you are in that faction, you're in that group, you're part of their block of votes, and you can't just walk away. You can't just leave and go join another party. Well, in this instance, they want to lower that number to 4. And one of the reasons they want to do that is that it could possibly allow the Change Bloc to get a few defectors from Likud, which is curious because Likud is seeking defectors from Yamina and New Hope. So Likud is actively trying to draw people away from the Change Bloc so that they won't vote for the Change Bloc. And the Change Bloc is considering a new law that would allow factions as small as 4 to leave their party, meaning that there would be a greater opportunity for greater chance that defectors could leave a larger party, like the Likud party. Okay, and that's kind of an interesting twist of the law there. Again, when you form an official government, a full coalition, not just an interim or caretaker government like the one that exists now until Bibi Netanyahu leaves office, you can make changes to the law like that. In the first blow to the ultra-Orthodox, I've spoken before here, one of my big biases that I claim and let you know about. We're getting into a little bit of my opinion turf here. I'm not a great fan of the Haredi, of the ultra-Orthodox, who get many special privileges in Israeli society because they have often been kingmakers in the coalitions, political coalitions. Their parties have been necessary to form a government. And as you've seen from this particular election, a kingmaker can have a lot of influence because their votes are necessary to bring the government together. Well, in the first major blow to the Haredi, there is talk of the new government including an egalitarian prayer section at the Kotel. The Kotel is the western wall beneath the Temple Mount, and it is where a large number of Jews pray. It's kind of become the property of the ultra-Orthodox. They act like they own the place. So when you go there, women who are not completely covered up, right, not wearing a bunch of coverings, are given shawls to wear over their person so that they're better covered, let's just say. And there's a separate women's section where women pray, and there's a fence between the two so that one side cannot see the other. This is called a mechitza in Jewish terminology, the separating the men and the women, something the Orthodox do. Not all Jews agree with this. I certainly don't. I've always been a fan of egalitarian prayer, where men and women pray next to each other. But, traditionally speaking, there was some separation between the two, and some people want to maintain that. It's not necessary, but they do it. Well, the Orthodox have been treating the Kotel like it's their private domain, like they own it, like they can do whatever they want there. And when groups like Women of the Wall go and do a prayer service where women are praying at the wall and holding the Torah and doing what they do, the Haredi riot. They become violent. They've attacked people there. And because they've been kingmakers in the coalition governments, they've gotten away with a lot of this. Well, it looks like the Change Bloc is going to create an egalitarian prayer section where people dressed as they are can go and pray, men and women, together if they wish, at the holy site. And that would be a huge step in the right direction, a major progress for Israel toward greater equality, greater equity, eliminating special privileges. The Haredi don't deserve any persecution. And if you go back and listen to previous episodes, I've gone into greater detail about my opinion there. They don't deserve to be persecuted per se, but they do have special privileges and rights and powers that are above and beyond those of the rest of Israeli society, and it's not fair. It's not good. It's something that needs to come to an end, needs to be curtailed. And the Change Bloc is going to start doing that, of course. The Change Bloc is the first government in Israel that does not include a religious party for some time, basically since 2005, when there was a coalition that did not include any religious parties. And that's going to be progress. Well, that concludes another exciting episode of Inside Israel News. Please do go back and listen to earlier episodes to catch up on the election process, some of the structure of the Israeli government, issues in Israeli societies, including social issues and other things going on, my opinions and the facts that I present. Also, please visit the Inside Israel News page on politicalvanguard.com. Politicalvanguard.com is the home of Inside Israel News. Find us on Facebook and like the Facebook page. That way you can stay up with news as it comes in and never miss an episode. With that, I will say goodbye. Lehitrot.
אולי נפליגה בספינות מחוף אילת עד חוף ועל המשחטות הישנות יטעינו תפוחי זהב. כל זה אינו משל ולא חלום,